Before we begin, if you believe that respect should be given to everyone regardless of their uniform or their bank account, please hit that like button. And if you love stories where the arrogant get exactly what they deserve, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss this. The smell of lemon verbena and industrial bleach is a specific scent. It is the scent of invisible labor. It is the smell of erasing someone else's existence so that they may feel like a king. Elena Washington knew this smell better than the scent of her own perfume. At 52, with a net worth that hovered comfortably in the 10-figure range, she could have bathed in Chanel No. 5. Yet, here she was, on her knees in the corridor of the Obsidian Hotel, scrubbing a coffee stain out of a plush Turkish runner rug. She wasn't crazy. She was thorough. The Obsidian was the jewel in the crown of legacy hospitality, the multinational chain Elena had built from the ground up. Today was the Global Hospitality Summit, an event hosting the titans of the industry, investors, CEOs, and tech moguls. Elena had a rule, one she never broke: before you speak to the masters, you must listen to the servants. So, she had donned the gray tunic and white apron of the housekeeping staff. She wore no makeup. Her hair was pulled back in a sensible, tight bun. She wanted to know if the carpets were clean, yes, but mostly she wanted to know how her managers treated her staff when they thought the boss wasn't looking. "Excuse me," a voice dripped from above her. It wasn't polite, it was the kind of "excuse me" that meant you are existing in my space. Elena didn't look up immediately. She finished the circular motion with her sponge, adhering to the training manual she had written herself 20 years ago. Then, she raised her eyes. Standing over her was a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a factory that produced arrogance. He was young, perhaps 30, wearing a tuxedo that cost more than most of her staff made in 3 months. This was Julian Thorne. Elena recognized him instantly. He was the scion of Thorne Capital, a hedge fund looking to buy a stake in her competitors. He was known in the financial papers as its disruptor, which usually meant he liked to fire people to make graphs look green. "You missed a spot," Julian sneered, nudging the toe of his patent leather shoe near her hand. Elena sat back on her heels, adjusting her glasses. "I beg your pardon, sir?" "The rug," Julian said, gesturing vaguely with a champagne flute. "It still looks filthy. Much like the service in this hallway. I've been standing here for 30 seconds and no one has offered to take my empty glass." "I am housekeeping, sir," Elena said, keeping her voice low and submissive. "Room service is a different department. But I can take the glass for you." She reached out. Julian pulled the glass back, laughing. He turned to his companion, a nervous-looking man named Greg. "Look at this, Greg. This is the problem with the old guard of hospitality. No initiative. They just stay in their lanes. If I ran this place, I'd automate her job in a week. A robot doesn't miss spots." Greg chuckled uncomfortably. "Come on, Julian. The summit is starting. We need to get seats for the keynote." Julian looked down at Elena, a cruel glint in his eye. He was bored, and Julian Thorne treated human beings like toys when he was bored. "Hey," he snapped his fingers in front of her face. "What's your name?" "Elise," Elena lied smoothly. It was her mother's name. Elise. "You know, inside those double doors, the smartest people in the world are talking about the future. Maybe you should come in." "Leave the rag." "Sir?" "I'm serious," Julian grinned, checking his reflection in the hallway mirror. "I have a +1. My date bailed. Why don't you come sit next to me? It'll be a social experiment. I want to see if a maid can understand high-level economics. It'll be funny. Like bringing a dog to the opera." Greg looked horrified. "Julian, you can't be serious." "Security will. I'm a platinum investor, Greg. I can bring a stray cat in there if I want." Julian looked back at Elena. "Well. Come on. Put down the sponge. Unless you prefer the floor." Elena felt a fire ignite in her chest, the same fire that had driven her from a housing project in Detroit to the boardroom of the New York Stock Exchange. But she banked the coals. She needed to see how far this rot went. "I would be honored, sir," she said, standing up. She smoothed her apron. "I have never seen inside the grand ballroom." "Perfect," Julian laughed. "Try not to steal the silverware." The ballroom was a sea of black ties and designer gowns. The air was cold, conditioned to a precise 68 degrees, another standard Elena had set to keep people alert. As Julian led Elena through the crowd, heads turned. It wasn't just that she was in a maid's uniform, it was the contrast. Julian, the picture of sleek, predatory wealth, parading a middle-aged black woman in work clothes like a carnival attraction. He shoved a chair out for her at a table near the front. "Sit. And don't speak unless I tell you to. I'm trying to close a deal with the owners of this chain today." Elena sat, folding her hands in her lap. The owners of Legacy Hospitality?
Yeah.
Julian took a sip of fresh champagne. Rumor is the CEO is looking for a partnership. They need fresh blood. They're too focused on a people and a culture. That's dead weight. I'm going to pitch a restructuring plan. Cut 30% of the housekeeping staff, people like you, and outsource it to third-party agencies. Saves 15% on benefits alone. Elena's face remained impassive, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Outsourcing. It was the death knell of quality. It stripped workers of their healthcare, their pensions, their dignity. It was everything she fought against. But sir, Elena said softly. If you outsource the cleaning, who checks the quality? Who ensures the guests feel safe? Julian rolled his eyes, turning to Greg. See? This is what I mean. Small thinking. Who checks the quality? The customer doesn't care about who cleans the toilet, Elise. They care about the price point. You're thinking like a worker. I think like an owner. I see, Elena said. So, the workers have no value? They are gears, Julian said dismissively. Replaceable. If a gear breaks, you buy a cheaper one. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the room. The summit was beginning. The MC, a famous news anchor, took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2024 Global Hospitality Summit. Today, we discuss the future. But first, a few words from our platinum sponsor. Julian straightened his tie. He wasn't the sponsor, but he was up next for a panel discussion. He leaned into Elena. Watch this. I'm going to go up there during the Q&A and tear their strategy apart. You'll learn something. The presentation dragged on. Graphs showing RevPAR, revenue per available room, and EBITDA margins flashed on the massive LED screens. Elena knew these numbers. She had approved them 3 days ago. Finally, the MC returned. And now, the moment we have all been waiting for. We were told she wouldn't be here today due to illness, but I have just received word that she is in the building. Please welcome the founder and CEO of Legacy Hospitality, the woman who turned a single bed and breakfast into a global empire. Ms. Elena Washington. The room erupted in polite applause. People craned their necks, looking toward the backstage curtain. Julian frowned. I thought she was sick. I heard she was old and losing her touch. Elena stood up. Julian snapped his head toward her. Sit down, Elise. Where are you going? The bathroom is in the back. Elena didn't look at him. She reached up and pulled the pins from her hair, letting it fall to her shoulders. She took off her glasses and placed them on the table next to Julian's champagne. Elise. Julian hissed, grabbing her wrist. You are embarrassing me. Sit down. Elena looked at his hand on her arm. Her gaze was terrifying. It was the look of a woman who had stared down union busters, hostile takeovers, and bankruptcy. Let go, she said. Her voice was no longer soft. It carried the weight of iron. Julian, stunned by the tone, released her. Elena turned and walked toward the stage. A murmur went through the crowd. Why was the maid walking to the stage? Was this a protest? Security guards stepped forward, but the head of security, a man named Marcus who had been with Elena for 15 years, held up a hand to stop them. He nodded at Elena. She walked up the stairs. The spotlight hit her. The gray uniform looked stark against the black velvet of the stage curtains. She walked to the podium. She didn't adjust the microphone, she knew exactly how to project. Thank you, she said. The silence in the room was absolute. Julian's mouth hung open. The color had drained from his face, leaving him a pale, sickly gray. He looked at the empty chair beside him, then up at the giant screen where Elena's face was now magnified 10 feet tall. I apologize for the attire, Elena began, gesturing to her apron. I was conducting a site inspection. You see, in this industry, the truth isn't found in the boardrooms. It's found in the hallways. It's found in the way we treat the people who clean up our messes. She scanned the crowd, her eyes locking instantly on table 4. On Julian. There is a belief among some, she continued, her voice echoing through the hall, that labor is a liability. That workers are merely gears to be replaced by cheaper parts. The camera panned to the audience. People were whispering. I was just told by a guest, Elena said, a dry smile touching her lips, that if he ran this company, he would fire 30% of my staff to save on benefits. He called it high-level economics. He told me that because I clean floors, I am incapable of understanding business. A gasp rippled through the room. That man, Elena pointed a finger directly at Julian Thorne, is sitting right there. The spotlight swung. A beam of harsh white light hit Julian. He froze, like a deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck. He tried to smile, but it looked like a grimace. He sank lower in his chair. Mr. Thorne, Elena said, addressing him over the PA system. You invited me here as a joke. You wanted to show a Maid her place. Well, Mr. Thorne, you are currently sitting in my hotel. You are drinking my champagne. And you are trying to invest in my company. Julian stood up, his hands shaking. Ms. Washington, I didn't know. It was a misunderstanding. A joke. A joke, Elena repeated. Humiliating a working-class woman is your idea of humor? She leaned over the podium. Let me teach you a lesson in economics, Julian. Since you are so fond of it. The hospitality industry is built on service. Service requires dignity. When you strip a worker of their dignity, you destroy the product. You don't just lose a maid, you lose the soul of the hotel. And when you lose the soul, you lose the guest. And when you lose the guest, you lose the money. I built this empire, she continued, her voice rising, on the backs of women like the one I was pretending to be today. My mother was a maid. I scrubbed floors to pay for business school. The people you want to fire? They work harder in an hour than you have worked in your entire life. The room exploded into applause. It started scattered, then grew into a roar. CEOs, investors, and managers stood up. Elena waited for the noise to die down. Mr. Thorne, you mentioned you represent Thorne Capital? Yes, Julian squeaked. We manage $2 billion in. I know who you are, Elena cut him off. I also know your firm holds a significant amount of short-term debt that is up for refinancing next month. Debt that is currently held by the legacy banking division of, well, this conglomerate. Julian's eyes went wide. No. That's not possible. It is, Elena said coldly. And as of this moment, I am instructing my financial team to review that portfolio with extreme scrutiny. I don't do business with people who treat my employees like animals. I suggest you leave my summit. And take your restructuring plan with you. Security guards, the same ones Julian had ignored earlier, appeared at his table. Sir, Marcus, the head of security, said politely. You're trespassing. Julian looked around for support, but even Greg had scooted his chair away, pretending not to know him. Julian Thorne, the man who thought he owned the world, was escorted out of the ballroom, the sound of 2,000 people applauding his exit ringing in his ears. Later that evening, Elena sat in her executive suite on the top floor. She had showered and changed into a navy business suit, but she kept the housekeeper's name tag on her desk. Elise. There was a knock at the door. 3 sharp raps. The protocol. Come in, Elena said. It was Maria, the actual housekeeper for this floor. She looked nervous seeing the CEO. I'm sorry to disturb you, Ms. Washington. I just came to turn down the bed. Elena smiled warmly. Come in, Maria. Actually, sit down for a moment. Maria hesitated, then sat on the edge of the sofa. How long have you worked for us? Elena asked. 6 years, ma'am. And how are your knees? I know the rugs on this floor are thick. They are okay, ma'am. The pads you gave us last year help. Elena nodded. She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a check. She had written it while waiting. I'm creating a new position, Elena said. Director of Staff Welfare. It's a liaison role. I need someone who knows what the job is actually like to tell corporate where we are failing. Someone who won't let men like Julian Thorne walk all over us. I want you to lead the team. Maria stared at the check. It was double her salary. Tears welled in her eyes. Ms. Washington. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Elena said, looking out the window at the city lights below. Just promise me one thing. When you see dirt, you clean it. Whether it's on the floor or in the boardroom. I promise, Maria whispered. Elena Washington picked up the name tag from the desk and tossed it into the trash. The disguise was gone, but the lesson remained. She walked to the window. Somewhere down there, Julian Thorne was likely explaining to his father why their firm was about to lose millions. He had learned the hard way, never confuse service with servitude, and never, ever mock the person holding the keys to the castle. If you enjoyed this story, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about justice, karma, and the truth behind the scenes. See you in the next video.